Tragically and outrageously, another black man was killed at the hands of police officers only 10 miles away from where the Derek Chauvin trials are taking place. The officer who shot Dante Wright shouted that she would use a taser. Instead, she deployed her firearm. She contends it was an accident. Let's look at this a little bit more. Is this the first time an officer says they meant to fire a taser instead of a gun? Documented cases show that from 2001 to 2012, at least, this kind of incident has happened an average of once a year. How easy is it to mistake a gun for a taser? The Glock 17, 19, and 26 is standard issue for the Brooklyn Center Police Department. These models weigh much more than a typical taser. Glocks often have a trigger safety that must be depressed when you pull the trigger. Tasers do not. Grips on tasers are typically different from those of a firearm, although they may feel similar because they're usually made from the same type of polymer. Tasers are often brightly colored or have brightly colored accents. Some experts cite if you train enough, you should be able to tell. However, experts also cite that officers train far more on drawing and firing handguns than they do stun guns. Brooklyn Center Police Department protocol dictates that officers wear their guns on their dominant side and tasers on the opposite side. My dominant hand is my right hand. Here, the scissors represent a taser and the shears a firearm. In many cases of mistaken tasers, the officer wears their holster in such a way that they can draw or cross-draw with their dominant hand, regardless of on which side the taser is holstered. Remember when I talked about those other documented incidents of mistaking firearms for tasers? All of these incidents happened when the officer had their taser holstered in such a way that they could draw with their dominant hand. We don't know how this officer, Kim Potter, holstered her arms. But body cam footage shows her partner with both weapons holstered so that he could draw from both taser and Glock with his dominant hand, hinting that other officers might have opted for the same holstering. Let's look at some other aspects. The Brooklyn Center Police Department Policy Manual states, all taser devices shall be clearly and distinctly marked to differentiate them from the duty weapon and any other device. The manual also states that a taser should not be used against people whose position or activity may result in collateral injury, including people who are operating vehicles. Dante Wright was sitting in the driver's seat when Officer Kimberly Potter fired, and his car careened several blocks after he was shot. Brooklyn Center police officers are also advised that reasonable effort should be made to target lower center mass and avoid the head, neck, chest, and groin if an officer is using a taser. According to the Hennepin County Medical Examiner, Dante Wright was killed by a gunshot wound to his chest. What does all this mean? It means a few things. 1. Why draw at all? We don't know what Dante Wright's warrant was for yet, but if it wasn't for genocide, there's no need to use deadly force, which the officer did, even assuming she meant to use her taser because she fired upon Wright while he was operating a 2,000-pound vehicle. We've got to get out of this cops and robbers mentality. If a person is suspected of having a kidnapping victim tied up in his basement, then yes, apprehend him immediately. But otherwise, arrest him at a safer place and time. Weaponry and vehicles don't mix. Don't endanger the suspect, any friends or family, including children they might be traveling with, and the public. To me, all of this boils down to a shoot-to-kill culture in law enforcement. But here's the biggest issue. In a system that is inherently biased, with weapons in biased hands, it's throwing a weighted die. And the people who will die, as a result, are Black men like Dante Wright. Thank you for listening.